Let's start with an independent t-test. Okay, so why do I emphasize independent? The important thing to know coming into this test is that your two groups are independent. The members of those groups should not know each other or relate to one another or have any reason to be matched or paired with one another. For example, with our kindergarten data set, I think I'm going to look at the post-test of my full-day kindergartners, and I'm going to compare that to the post-test of my homeschool kindergartners, okay? And these are children who probably have not met each other. It's possible that they have, but there's no reason to match them together, to pair them up. They're independent. The things that my kindergarten students do in the full day school are completely independent of the things that a different group of kindergartners do who are homeschooled. So it's an independent t-test. Now, if you're going to turn in homework with the exercise data set, then one way to find independent groups is maybe to separate your males and your females. You might want to sort your data set so that you can look at males as one group that's independent from females. Another way of finding two independent groups is your group of smokers. Compare them to your group of non-smokers. Those are independent groups, two different groups that don't really correlate to one another, relate to one another, match with one another. They're independent. Okay, then what we're going to do, of course, is follow the instructions in the assignment in the documents that I've posted and come up with a research question. So here I'm going to say, do full-day kindergartners perform differently on a reading test than homeschoolers? I don't know which group is going to be highest, so I'm just going to say perform differently, and that means I'm conducting a two-tailed test. For information about a one-tailed test, watch the next paired t-test video. So it's two tails because think about it logically. Homeschoolers may do better, or full-day kindergartners may do better, and I don't have any reason to assume one over the other. Then I'm going to come up with my null hypothesis, which is there's no difference, right? The null means no, nothing much is going on. Both groups are basically the same on that post-test in reading. Well, if you have Excel on a PC, not on a Mac, then you'll have a data tab here. And in this data tab, you'll be able to add in the data analysis tools. And I'll post a separate video about how to add this one in. Once you've added it in, you can come in here to Analysis Tools and come down to the t-tests, and we're going to do the two sample. Two sample is another word for independent, and I don't care which one you pick. You can assume equal variances or you can assume unequal variances. They're usually about the same. I'll assume unequal variances, okay? I'll click OK on this, and then I'll tell them, see my cursor's in variable 1, I'm going to compare the post-test of full-day kindergarten. Variable 2 is going to be the post-test of homeschoolers. Okay? I think the difference between the two will be 0. That's my null hypothesis. My alpha is 0.05, and I'd like you to write that in the assignment, and this will go into a new worksheet. I click on OK, and here are my results. I'm going to make these much bigger. So my independent or two-sample t-test came up with a p-value right here. Let me highlight this in yellow, of 3.45, but then look, there's this little negative 0.05 or negative 0.05 at the end. Let me type that in for you. What that means is the negative 0.05 means you have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, and you start typing the numbers in the fifth place past the decimal, 3, 4, 5, 5. So that is my p-value. That is much less than 0.05, and I can say that yes, this is significant because it's less than 0.05, and therefore I can reject my null hypothesis and say, actually, there is a difference in my full-day kindergartners and my homeschool kindergartners. Then I can come up and look at the means. I can say, well, my full day, which I called variable 1, had a mean of 36.85, and my homeschool had a mean of 19.35. Therefore, I can say that my full-day kindergartners did significantly better on the test. Even though I started with a two-tailed test, I wasn't sure which one. Now that I've conducted the test and I found that it's significant, I know that it's the full-day kindergartners who have done better. Then when I write this up, let me just bring up a Word document here. I can say I reject the null, and I put here my t with my degrees of freedom in parentheses. And let me show you, they're here in the Excel spreadsheet. The degrees of freedom are right here. Oh, excuse me, I put 19. They're 34. Let me go back and fix that. My t statistic is right here. My t statistic is 4.76, or I can round that up to 4.77 equals, 4.77. Usually for the t value, we put only 2 decimal places, and for the p-value, we go ahead and we put 4 decimal places. So for this one, I would just have to put p is less than 0.0001. Do you see? Because it's even less than that. And this is, so let me put p is less than 0.1231. Because remember, it was 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, and then our 4. This is more information than you need to know, but it is good for APA style to remember that you need a T. In fact, T needs to be italicized. Then you need the degrees of freedom. You need the T statistic with 2 decimal places, and you need a p-value with 4 decimal places, or 3 decimal places is acceptable. That is the short version of how to do this in Excel. If you would like, let's go back to sheet 1. If you have a Mac, or if you just don't want to worry about this data analysis function, which is a little complicated, you also have the option of coming in here to this graph pad, and I've given you the link for this page. When you get to this page, make sure you've chosen the t-test to compare two means, and then continue here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to enter or paste up to 2,000 rows. And that makes it easy for me to come back here. I'm going to take my post test and copy and paste here. And then I'm going to go back and grab my post test from homeschool, copy, and paste in here. Okay, I've pasted those. This is an unpaired test. We won't use this Welch's unpaired test. As they say, it's used rarely. Okay, and now I'm going to calculate and see my results. Okay, so here we should have exactly the same results that we had in Excel. We have a t-value of 4.76. We have 38 degrees of freedom. and we have a p-value of less than 0.0001, which is the p-value that I've got on my page here. So here's my problem right here. I've got 34 degrees of freedom, whereas when I've calculated the test online, I come up with 38 degrees of freedom. One reason I like degrees of freedom is because they can raise a red flag. Something's wrong here. So let me give you a hint and you can decide which one is wrong. The degrees of freedom is supposed to be the total sample size minus the number of means that we calculated. So remember, we have 20 homeschoolers and 20 kindergartners. That's 40, that's our sample size. We calculated one mean for the homeschoolers and one mean for the full day kindergartners over here. So the degrees of freedom should be 38, and that means that this GraphPad software was right. Well, what mistake did I make? It's a mistake that's very common that you may make sometimes also. Do you see how when I've highlighted this post-test here, this top cell is actually white instead of gray? It looks like it's not being included with the rest of the cells. And sure enough, if I go back and check my data analysis, what happened in my test here is that it assumed for some reason that this top cell was not included. Maybe it called this a label, although I didn't click on the label box. But I've got some problem here where not all of the data was included in Excel. So maybe that's an argument right there. Go ahead and use the website. Sometimes it works a little better than Excel. Of course, if you do this in Excel, if you come up with a degrees of freedom that's off, if you have a p-value that's off, if it's difficult to interpret what this standard way of writing with standard notation down here is, I'll give you feedback on your assignment. I can give you a chance to correct it. If it's just a little minor thing, I'm not going to take points off. This is meant to be an experience for you, a learning experience, and to give you a chance to start to wrap your head around the two hypotheses that we write, because they can be tough. So good luck with this. Please send questions my way, and thanks for listening.